What really happened with your host, Mike Rivero. The history the government hopes you never learn. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
And aloha, America. Welcome to our show today. It is Tuesday, March 24th, 2020. Getting into the week here. We have a lot to talk about today. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443, 800-313-9443. Mike is in our control room, twiddling the dials, keeping us out of trouble, ready to answer the phone when you call on in, put you on the air with your comments, questions, observations, and opinions here. So let's get right on into it. Right now, over in the Congress, that grand asylum for the aged and helpless, they're still thrashing back and forth on the coronavirus stimulus bill. But as of last report, it looks like the Democrats and Schumer are backing off pushing Nancy Pelosi's bill. They have been subjected to a tremendous amount of criticism and ridicule because most of the bill has got absolutely nothing to do with coronavirus and its impact on the economy. They got things in there like they want tax credits for solar panels. It's basically this, fairy tale list of all the things the Democrats want, and it's going to be a must-pass bill, and they're desperate to not pass the bill that came from the White House, but it looks like they're backing down. And the reason for that obviously has to do with keeping the stock market up. Now, the stock market had a really good day today. The Dow is up 2,093. And if they don't pass this bill, I mean, they've had all these votes and it's failed all the time. If they don't pass this thing, there will be a major crash tomorrow. That's just the way that's going to be. Meanwhile, of course, the lockdowns are continuing, although I was listening to Donald Trump's press conference a little earlier today, and it looks like he's starting to change his tune. He's pulling back from the lockdown, keep everybody separate, and now he's starting to talk about getting the economy going again. Of course, it's an either-or situation, and, the White House is the hottest kitchen there is in the world. And no matter what he does, people are going to complain. But then, Donald, you wanted the job, and this is part of what that job is going to be, making decisions that a lot of people are not going to like. So they're already talking about restarting the economy. They're talking about lifting the restrictions on businesses and people. And, of course, the World Health Organization is saying, well, this is just going to spark a new surge of the coronavirus infections, which is going to happen anyway. Even with all the lockdowns, this thing is spreading. They can't contain it. All they can do is hope that they're going to come up with a cure for it that isn't worse than the disease itself. And apparently all of these quinone derivatives that they're starting to use and test and evaluate have a problem with retinopathy. In other words, they can damage your eyesight. So more wonderful things from Big Pharma here. At midnight tonight, Indiana goes on lockdown. All non-essential businesses have to shut down. Our bank has already closed its lobby, and obviously the food stores will still be open. Apparently the liquor stores will still be open. That's considered essential. But other things like the hardware store and Dollar General and all the rest of that are probably going to be closed. So, and of course, we all have to stay home. Of course, but if you really think about it, how often do you get to save humanity by sitting on your rear end watching television all day? So anyway, out in Hawaii, they have imposed a 14-day mandatory quarantine on all arriving people. And if you have a home in Hawaii, they want you to stay in your home for 14 days. If you are a tourist coming to visit Hawaii, they want you to stay in your hotel room. That's going to kill what's left of tourism out there in Hawaii. And I mentioned the other day, I have some friends on the island who were being treated by a doctor who went to a medical conference where he was exposed to COVID-19. And today I found out they've now been given the COVID-19 test. It'll be a week before they get the results. So Maui apparently is closed. A lot of the major carriers have canceled their flights going to Hawaii. And so it's going to be rough over there. And you know what's really ironic? Only a few weeks ago, the locals there in Hawaii were complaining there were too many tourists and it was taking up the beaches and taking up all these other venues, and the indigenous people really couldn't enjoy it. Well, now you can. Now you can. You got it all to yourself now. So it's a lesson. Be careful what you wish for. Okay, over in Europe, everybody is out of supplies already. And we're finding out that in a lot of cases, all these supplies were used up back in 2009 for the when pigs fly flu, and they were not restocked. And everyone's trying to say, Donald Trump dropped the ball and he wasn't getting our protective gear. But it turns out it was the Obama administration following the 2009 when pigs fly flu who said, we don't need to restock all that stuff. And Cuomo was on the air a little while ago complaining about how there are emergency stockpiles held by the federal government of things like ventilators and masks that are not being released. And he's absolutely right, they should be. And he's apparently impressing a lot of people with how he's handling this. He certainly seems to be far more on the ball than Joe Biden's attempt to have his own coronavirus briefings from his home, which apparently he fumbled. Anyway, we're going to do a shout out to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining our network. But over in Europe, they're starting to modify trash bags as hazmat suits. That's how desperate they are. They're taking trash bags, cutting them apart, putting them back together with sticky tape, trying to use those as makeshift biohazard suits. I certainly hope it works. I certainly hope it works. All righty. COVID-19 shatters the facade of European Union, and that's because all of the member states of the European Union are starting to close their borders to try and slow the spread of COVID-19. And I don't think it's going to work. I think it's pretty much everywhere already. And again, the big unknown is the fact that apparently, according to a study that came out of China, 1/3 of the people walking around with COVID-19 don't know they've got it. They're not symptomatic. They don't know that they're sick. They don't know that they're contagious. And that is really going to mess up trying to get a handle on this thing. All righty. Russian military planes are carrying medics and equipment to Italy to help combat the COVID-19 pandemic. They have sent 7 of their military transport planes, these big, gigantic Condor planes. They're magnificent aircraft there. For a while, there was a little bit of a kerfuffle where Poland was saying that the Russians couldn't use their airspace, but apparently at the last second, the Polish government came back and said, yeah, of course, this is mercy mission. This is not war, and you can use our airspace to get down there. So that worked out very, very well. It is amazing in the face of, well, not amazing, but gratifying that in the face of this crisis, we're starting to see some of the old hostilities fade away, where everybody's saying, look, we've got a real problem now. Forget about this make-believe hostility between East and West and rich and poor and industrialized and third world. We've got to deal with this crisis. And so maybe when this is all over, people will look back and say, why did we allow ourselves to get suckered into that whole thing in the first place? Because I remember after the Berlin Wall came down and, the old Soviet Union went away and we were all buddy-buddy. And it worked. It was working out great. It was working out great for the American people. It was working out great for the Russian people. And then all of a sudden, some politician said, we need a new enemy. We've got to have an enemy to scare the American people into obedience and paying higher taxes and spending it all on things that go boom in the night. Over in Jordan, people who are caught outdoors without a really, really good reason risk a year in prison. This is an unprecedented nationwide curfew, and they've got basically confirmed cases approaching 100, not a lot, but they're expecting the numbers to rise rapidly. So Jordan blew sirens at the start of the nationwide curfew, limiting the mobility of its 10 million citizens indefinitely to combat the spread of coronavirus. And if you are caught outside, it's round the clock. If you're caught outside without a really, really good reason, they'll put you in jail. That's how serious they are about it. Here in Indiana, the radio commercial's already out there saying that essential travel out of your home is to go to the grocery store, if you haven't already stocked up, to go to the liquor store, which is considered essential, but everything else is pretty much shut down. Anyway, Pakistan has confirmed 477 coronavirus cases, 104 just in the last 24 hours. It's an exponential curve. I'm going to try and get through the coronavirus stuff and get on to other stuff really, really quick, but it does dominate the news cycle here. Anyway, they're considering going into an extreme shutdown down in New Zealand. And the Prime Minister's former chief science advisor, Sir Peter Gluckman, is warning the government it needs to do more to respond to COVID-19. And he tweeted out, the evidence is mounting that the best thing New Zealand could do is make the hard decision to go into an extreme shutdown. But again, the other day, the World Health Organization came on out and said the lockdowns aren't really going to do anything except create a false sense of security. Okay, now then, we're seeing a story, and again, this is from New Zealand. Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern has lifted the country's alert status to level 3, and they're predicting it'll be level 4 in just 48 hours. And they're saying that once you detect the COVID-19, it moves very, very quickly, and that's why they're going to do this. Everybody's hitting the panic button here. Over in Berlin, the streets are pretty much deserted. Germany has introduced stricter measures amid the pandemic. And German Chancellor Angela Merkel, who is in quarantine right now, I should point out, has ramped up measures to combat the coronavirus outbreak, effectively banning gatherings of more than 2 people across Germany unless they are related or live together. Oh. And again, going back to that article we talked about yesterday, we don't really know. We don't have accurate information. We really, really don't here. Now, here's the counterexample. I just got done saying maybe some of these old hostilities will go away in the face of the crisis. Not all of them, though. And the counterexample here is apparently the International Monetary Fund is refusing to loan money to Venezuela to deal with COVID-19. It's clearly a political decision to increase pressure on that country to knuckle under to demands from the United States of America, which I think constitutes biological warfare. Do what we say, or we're going to let the coronavirus get you. Anyway, another little situation here is apparently the blood type that you have impacts how severely COVID-19 will affect you. And people with blood type O seem more resistant to coronavirus. And unfortunately, people with blood type A are more vulnerable to COVID-19, which includes, unfortunately, yours truly. I'm still healthy. I'm still feeling fine. There is more than 6 feet between myself and you, so you're safe here. New York City officials have published a guide to intimacy during the COVID-19 pandemic, including the advice, this is not a good time for having orgies. Those New Yorkers, what can I tell you? Meanwhile, transgender individuals are getting seriously upset that gender reassignment surgeries are deemed non-essential. And I think they're being a little bit silly because no matter how much they want it, that doesn't make it essential. Right now, hospitals are canceling non-essential services and procedures to make way for the coronavirus patients here. In fact, I was scheduled for a medical test next Monday. That's now been put on hold. So, but apparently the transgenders are just really upset, saying, you know, that it is essential that I get something snipped off. Okay, story that is coming on out of Domagood.com. Apparently, police are going to start using drones with night vision cameras to patrol neighborhoods and catch people breaking the stay-at-home rules. That's really getting into George Orwell, if you ask me. So the World Health Organization is getting ready to try experimental treatments on the coronavirus. 10 countries have committed to participating. The United States is not one of them. They're calling it the Solidarity Trial. We'll see researchers from several countries compare the effects of different drugs on the infectious disease. And I would suspect that the United States wants to come up with their own and then market it to the rest of the world. But President Trump is sending hydroxychloroquine and Z-Paks to New York City for drug trials, which is now considered the U.S. epicenter of the coronavirus pandemic. Remember when it was Washington State? Then, oh my goodness, Washington State, they had all of those cases. They still have a lot of cases, but apparently it is really racing out of control in New York City, especially because of that tight urban environment. And everyone's saying stay 6 feet apart from each other. Well, you can't do that on the subways. You just absolutely cannot. Public transportation right now is a negative. Crammed together on buses, crammed together on trains, crammed together on commuter jets. Now, everybody is using the crisis, the COVID-19 crisis, to push whatever agenda they're pushing at that particular moment. And apparently, the Department of Justice is seeking the authority to detain people indefinitely without trial. They want to suspend habeas corpus. And they want to be able to go directly to chief judges and simply say, we need to detain this person during the emergency. That is a little bit scary. A major power grab. Okay, we're going to take a phone call now from Joe in Tennessee. Aloha, Joe. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. You brought up Andrew Cuomo in New York there, and I got to admit, I mean, I can't stand him. I remember I left New York. I'm an ex-New Yorker. Him and his, if you want your guns, get out of my state. If you're against abortion, get out of my state. So, I mean, I want to preference it that I hate the guy in that regard, but I can separate my hatred for somebody with my observations of him. And man, he's a smooth operator. I mean, you watch his pretty much daily coronavirus speeches or whatever you want, meetings, and he's slick. I mean, he's doing a great job in his communication ability, his calmingness, making people calm, and his information. I mean, I got to say, in this instance, he's really come up, and it's almost a shame that he didn't. I mean, the Democrats can't throw Biden over the side and have him run for president. I mean, maybe there's something in the background. I don't know.
There's actually talk about that right now, that since it is entirely possible it's going to go to a brokered convention anyway, that Cuomo may be put on in and be the Democratic candidate. And he would definitely give Donald Trump a run for his money.
Well, I think if this coronavirus thing pans out and Trump gets the country back to work and it turns out to be not as severe as we think, Trump's going to reap a lot of rewards politically, but that can be negated, just like you say, by the Democrats by having a brokered convention and putting Cuomo in, because Cuomo's also going to reap a lot from this crisis politically. So in a way, although if everything works out well, which everybody hopes, then Trump will be in really good position to just beat Biden like a red-haired stepchild. But Cuomo would negate all that, because Cuomo's going to come out, if this thing, does calm down, he's going to come out really smelling like a rose. And as much as I can't stand the guy, I mean, he's got a very good personality for this crisis. He's really, of all of them, and I've seen Pritzker and Newsom and, DeSantis and a lot of the other ones. Boy, Cuomo really is slick. I mean, he's got that nasal talk sometimes, but I know my mom is like really loving it. She says he calms her down, and and she's a good like indicator of a Democratic voter. I wanted to add one thing besides Cuomo, and that's Boeing. And this whole $2 trillion thing, stimulus. We need a stimulus, and it's bound to happen. I mean, when you have a crisis, of course, the fascist Wall Street socialists and bankers are going to get their money somehow. They're going to blackmail us. They're going to get it.
Joe, I got to put you on hold. Yeah. We're going to take a break for commercials. Don't hang up. I'm going to come right back to you after these words from our sponsors. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. And once again, we have our hands out because Republic Broadcasting Network needs you. They need your help. Revenues are down, and I understand it. It's very hard for us to ask you to dip into your pocket because we know that you're all suffering right now with this horrible economy and the stock market going crazy. But we do need your help to stay on the air. So if you can help us, please do. And a very heartfelt thanks to those of you who've already donated and to those of you who are going to donate again. The postal address to send a check, money order, or if you prefer anonymity, cash, is Republic Broadcasting Network, 2251 Double Creek Drive, number 302, Round Rock, Texas, 78664. The phone number where you can make a credit or debit card donation is 800-724-2719, extension 3. The network thanks you. All right, getting back to Joe in Tennessee, when the government starts talking about handing out a few $1 trillion, you're going to see a lot of people lining up trying to get a chunk of that money. And you're absolutely right. People who've already got money, they're going to be at the front of the line saying, we need some more. But something that you need to keep in mind, first of all, Trump is out there saying he wants to get all of this coronavirus over and done with and everybody back to work by Easter, April 12th. And it's a nice ambition. I hope he can do it. But the reality is that for corporations and businesses, these are not gifts. The money is a low-interest loan, and they're going to have to pay it back somewhere down the road unless they politic their way out of that.
Well, my whole thing is there's a few very unpalatable companies I don't really want to see money go into without some changes. I mean, Boeing is a big one in my book. With their 737 fiasco, that space rocket they had that blew up. And then the worst thing is they have that one Boeing executive that attacked a female Trump supporter at the Willard Hotel. Remember that? I called you about that one. So to me, they can't just give Boeing like they've done before. They give them government low-interest rate loans so that they buy their stock back with it. And so I know they're going to give them money because Boeing's got a lot of power and a lot of workers, but they have to have some real strings attached. Put them in receivership or government management or stock ownership or the different things that I really want to see. They should fire that executive, that one that attacked the Trump supporter at the Willard Hotel. Is he going to be getting a bonus? Is he getting government money? And that's what bothers me about it. I don't really like this whole giving away money. I mean, I guess they're going to give us all a check. I mean, if I get a check, I'll send you guys a little bit. That's for sure.
Thank you.
But I don't know. I don't know what there'll be strings attached. And usually when they give out money, middle class guys like me, working guys, we don't get it for some reason. It always goes to the low end, the poor people that don't do anything, or it goes to the rich people through interest-free loans and kickbacks in their stocks and all that kind of stuff. So I'd be very surprised if the Congress, Republican Congress, and the corporate Wall Street Democrats throw anything in there like for a guy like me. But I'm not. To tell you the truth, I just don't want to see all these rotten companies get all this free money without any repercussions, without any kind of strings attached. I mean, make sure they keep the jobs. There's no more outsourcing of jobs to China, and make sure there's some strings attached for America. Not one penny should go to any enterprise that's not in this country. Nothing. Now you could, so I think that, and I'm sure they're not putting anything like that in there because they're rolling over. They're all owned by these same people. But that's why there's a problem with this. And it's, to me, it doesn't look like it's going to be much better than the whole TARP thing was in 2008, 2009. I was against that. And I have to say, I'm kind of against this. I think it's, they sit there and they bring the market down and put a gun to our head, and next thing you know, they pass this stuff in a hurry. It's all done in the middle, written up in the middle of the night. We'll find out all the different goodies that are in there for everybody, but it won't be us, and it won't be the American worker. It won't be the populist. It'll be for on the left. It'll go to like the underclass. and stupid things like global warming and gay this and that. And then on the right, it'll go to all the corporate people, the Chamber of Commerce Republicans. So, they talk about, they always do this. They talk about how it's going to help the small business and how it's going to help the working guy, and it never does. So if they wanted to help the working man and have strings attached, you can't outsource jobs. You can't use any of this money for overseas, but they won't. They never do. So, but once again, I got a hard time with Boeing, especially like I said. I've called you about Boeing 2 or 3 times complaining about that.
No, yes, you haven't.
And,
it's tragic to see such an iconic, historic company under such terrible management. Anyway, Joe, I need to let you go. We got to take another break.
All right,
for
thank
commercial. We've got another caller waiting on the line, and we will be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. And I guess Hawaii's got some company now, because over in Florida, Governor DeSantis has now imposed a 14-day quarantine on people arriving from New York. So, yeah, that's still out there. Apparently, they've got over 1,400 confirmed cases down there as well. All right, we're going to go back to the phones here to Kevin in West Virginia. Aloha, Kevin. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
This depression and all of the stimulus package is on my mind. Plus, I have something else I wanted to say. But this,
Okay, Kevin, we seem to be losing the phone connection.
Is that better?
Yeah, much better.
Okay. Okay, what I don't understand is why we're going to shut the country down for 500 people dying. Here's a question. Why didn't we shut the country down for 500 dead babies that die every day due to Planned Parenthood? But what I really don't get, and Joe was talking about, the stimulus package. Hey, Joe, one of the strings attached to this is a digital dollar. They want to do away with cash. That's a big string tied to this. And I don't know if you've read any of the things that the Democrats want in this bill, the little wish list, but that was just one of them. And I will not follow any unconstitutional order or mandate that they try to make me do, like comply to a curfew, comply to being quarantined. I ain't doing it. I'm not doing it. I'm not. I'm not going to allow myself to consume to tyranny. Like, I don't know how many other people think like I think, because this virus, is not as deadly as what everybody thinks. We need to restart our economy and get people working again. Because if you don't, our numbers are going to go through the roof. It's going to make the Great Depression look like a cakewalk. I mean, you're talking 700 million people dead during the Great Depression with people that were self-sufficient. Now you're only talking about only 5% of the people now are self-sufficient. Shutting the economy down is way more worse and deadly than a virus.
Well, they may not be able to recover the economy. It may be too much damage has already been done. Whatever it is they're planning to have sent out in checks to ordinary people, it's not enough, and it's way too late. So I don't know. I mean, like I said, Trump wants this all back up and running by Easter. It sounds good. I don't think he can do it.
Here's a couple other questions, and you don't have to answer these if you don't. But why the slow rollout? Why weren't we doing this months ago if this was so dangerous? Why this doesn't seem right. The response doesn't seem right at all to me. I mean, what else is really going on? I almost have to believe there's something else going on with how this is rolling out. I don't know. I don't know what it is or if it's anything, but something is really wrong. Like, I feel it in the air. I can smell it. It just, something's wrong, and it's unrelated to this virus. I mean, we do have a virus. We do have a disease. It's called politicians. Let's get rid of them. Let's get rid of that disease.
Got my vote.
But that's all I have to say for you, sir. I hope you have a great and wonderful day, and give Miss Claire the best.
I certainly will. Thank you very much. Okay, so apparently President Trump, in his latest coronavirus task force press briefing, everybody's out there doing press briefings. Biden was doing one. Apparently, he fumbled it rather badly. And I want to insert here right now, there is no truth to the rumor that Joe Biden will be allowed to hide his own eggs for the Easter egg hunt. That's a completely bogus rumor, no truth to it whatsoever. Anyway, the National Guard has been activated to help New York, California, and Washington State, but they're still insisting there is no plan for a nationwide crackdown, curfew, lockdown, although more and more states are obviously doing it on their own here. Up in New York, the U.S. Army is busy converting hotels and dormitories to hospital rooms for the COVID-19 patients here. And apparently the number of confirmed cases in New York, just New York, not the whole country, but New York, 10,356. New York City has 6,211 of them. And again, it's that tight urban environment. And it's all well and good to say maintain 6 feet of separation, which you can do out on the sidewalk or the streets that are deserted, but you can't do that in the subways, you can't do it in the buses, you can't do it in the elevators. And again, knowing that the virus can survive on surfaces for hours. I mean, just think about those elevator buttons. And I mentioned the other day, Claire and I got a pizza from the local pizza place, and every time somebody came in or out that door, they were over there with the disinfecting wipes on that door. That's how serious they're taking this whole situation here. But apparently, according to the Wall Street Journal, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers plans to take over as many as 10,000 hotel rooms, college dormitories, and other spaces. They're turning the Javits Center into a triage hospital as well. All right, we're going to go back to the phones to Peter in Los Angeles. Aloha, Peter. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. First off, I think that Kevin is right in his assertion that the economy is more dangerous in the long term than anything else, and that we need to start getting people to work. Maybe they break down the data and maybe keep the over 60s at home and find some way to compensate them, the people who are most vulnerable, and everybody else just take precautions and get back to work as best they can. Would be a good thing. Yesterday, I don't know who said it. Was it Dustin or somebody about using the 10 aircraft carriers plus all the helicopter carriers we have and using them as hospital ships? It's an excellent idea. But I also we don't even know. Mike, do you know what the mortality rate is for this?
Well, the mortality rate here in the United States is 1.3%. Other countries like Italy, it's 9%, but that may have more to do with the way they count the dead and tabulate the data than it does the real situation. But the fact of the matter is that if as many people had COVID-19 as have the flu, we'd be looking at over 1 million deaths.
Well, and if it's let's take the 1.3. Let's take 2. It's easier. If 2% mortality rate, and say half of those, or more than half, probably, are people like us over 60.
Yes.
Right? Then you keep them at home. Find a way to compensate them, and put everybody else back to work as quick as you can. But I was also thinking, if it really is 1.3, and I'm watching these channels, the old westerns, that I'm homebound here, and where there's an old person demographic that's watching Gunsmoke and stuff like that, and every single ad, just about, is for some sort of over-the-counter drug with some heinous side effect. And as I listen, I love listening to the disclaimers. That makes your kidney fall out. It could lead to death. Yeah. A lot of them can lead to death, right? Well, if we can put up with that, right, then you know what? How about a 1%, or 1.3% mortality rate on the people that get it? The government's been selling us as poison for years, and the networks have been taking the money to advertise them. And now we're locking down the whole country if it is indeed that low, and if the targeted population of the people who are really at risk is so manageable,
Well, there's another way of looking at this, and the deaths are a tragedy. There's no question about it. But there's also the fact that a lot of people are very sick and can't get to work. And the reality is right now that the number of people who have died is greater than the number of people confirmed to have recovered. And we have those other reports coming out of China that people who have recovered from COVID-19 can re-succumb, and it's actually going to be much more serious the second time around. And that's where,
is that right, Mike?
Yeah. The question here is, it looks like 1.2, 1.3 doesn't look like a serious number right now. But the thing is, we don't know over the long term how this virus is going to behave.
The other thing, Mike, is the long term, and Whitney Webb wrote a good article I forwarded to you about how, what's not being said about continuation of government and all that, and the martial law stuff, and the drones, and what concerns me is that we've already lost First Amendment rights. We've always lost Second Amendment rights. We've already lost privacy with surveillance. We've already lost search and seizure, and now we can't assemble. And
yeah.
I understand the reason for the not assembly, but how much more dystopian can you get when you're talking about no freedom of speech, no right to assemble, no right to firearms, nothing. It's very scary, and it's to me that's very scary. And I wanted to bring one more point up. Maybe you brought it up yesterday, but the ADL, the Anti-Defamation League, which does its best to take away our First Amendment rights and probably our right to assemble as well. They want to be bailed out by the government. They're so essential in taking away our First Amendment rights that they need to be bailed out by the government. I thought that was hilarious.
I thought it was hilarious.
Did you see that, Mike? Did I see that on What Really Happened?
Yeah, we did. We ran the story and we did it on the radio show yesterday. It's just, things are good, ask for more money. Things are bad, ask for more money.
Jeez, my Lord. But the fundamental loss of rights and the ease of which martial law is being, we're taking it because it's affecting just about everybody, but the ease at which government will now declare martial law, I think that the firewall has been breached and will be a much lower, the bar is much lower in calling it than it would have been before. So.
Yeah, I think right. And there's a lot of people out there saying that, the government is using this excuse to ramp up its power over the people.
As they always do, both sides of the aisle. But as they always do. Anyways, that's my take for the day. But bless you and Claire and everybody out there, and hey, we can't fight this unless we can get back to work. There's nothing to come out of this thing. There's no civilization, and we're going to face, Mad Max and a Mad Max kind of world in 3 months if we don't have an economy to come back to that's even salvageable by then. So.
I don't think it is salvageable. I think one of the reasons they've hyped up this COVID-19 as much as they have is to be able to blame the crashing economy on it, because they just couldn't keep it together much longer. And that's why I say, Trump may say we're going to have this all back running on by Easter. I don't think he can do it. And if the Senate does not pass that COVID-19 stimulus package today, I think we're going to see a bloodbath on the stock market tomorrow.
Mike, if my view of the world is that the whole federal government, the whole government structure in the United States is there to carry out the will of the people to pay all of their bills, the 1/10 of 1%, the billionaires. And the billionaires, this bailout where they're going to give $3,000 or whatever to anybody who makes lower than $90,000 or whatever, that's simply targeted at the people that they don't want to see them bum rushed, their ivory towers. They don't want the us rushing out of starvation and desperation, and hauling them out of their limos and tar and feathering them, or worse. That's part of it. The other part of it, I down the line, is these guys, the billionaires, they don't want to come out and have their empires in ruins. They'll have cash, but no, the cash will be debased, the empire and the assets will be debased, and I think they want to come out to rule over something. And just as Trump made the decision to put them first when instead of coming on strong early about coronavirus, he deferred to the people who cared about the stock exchange, right? That was his number one priority. That's the government's number one priority, the rich. I think that they'll do the same thing for these guys too. I think they'll want to put us back to work just to lower the desperation rate and to have something, the billionaires need something to come back to. That's my theory.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for the phone call and for the theory here. We're going to let you go and go to Dustin in New Jersey. Aloha, Dustin. Welcome to the show. I may have to take you through the next commercial break. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. Before I get to responding to Kevin and Peter, I just want to tell you there's 1 million new unemployment filed in Canada. 1 million. That's insane. Yeah,
I got an email earlier. It's in the letters section of the website about somebody was trying to call unemployment because they qualify, and they got a message on the phone saying the phone lines are loaded. We're not taking any more phone calls today. It's happening all across the country.
Yep, and Mike, getting to Kevin. Hey, Kevin, you do realize you can go to the store, you can go outside. You just can't gather with a whole bunch of people, because you do realize you can spread it. Okay, so if you get it and you don't have no symptoms, you might have mild symptoms, you might have medium or worse symptoms, but you'll give it to your mom, you give it to your dad, you'll give it to your sister, your brother, your friends, and that's how it spreads. That's why I got to disagree with Kevin and Peter. I always agree with Peter. I can't this time. Mike, I talked about this yesterday with the UK doing the research into herd immunity.
Yes.
And they came out to where if they did nothing, they put everybody back to work like Trump wants to do by Easter, UK alone was looking at 300,000 people dead and the whole hospital system collapsed. Okay? So, and I want people to think about this. That's not including the people who are on respirators, right? That's not including pneumonias. That's not include. There's a wide variety of age brackets here, people. It's not just 60-year-olds. There's 50-year-olds, 16-year-olds, 40. Nobody knows their immunity. Sure, it's tracking the aged more, but it's about your immunity, okay? And I'll hold over.
Yeah, I got to put you on hold. We got to take another break for commercials, and we'll be right back with more phone calls. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. We're talking with Dustin in New Jersey. And Dustin, the idea of herd immunity requires something like 80% of the population to become infected. And that's a lot of people dealing with this virus.
But if you just tell everybody to go back to work, Mike, Italy is all out of ventilators, right? And
yes.
Probably Spain is too. Well, New York, I watched Cuomo. FEMA has only got 400 ventilators. Cuomo said he needs 30,000 now. If everybody goes back to work, how many ventilators do you think the whole country would need?
Quite a few.
A lot, right? Yeah, those people will all be dead, right? Pretty much.
Okay, well, I'm looking. Apparently, Cuomo was offered thousands of ventilators some time ago and a good price, but Cuomo passed on it. Apparently, this is a story coming out of Alex Jones.
Yeah, I didn't hear that. I just heard that FEMA offered him 400, and he's obviously going to take the 400. But people need to keep that in mind. It's not just people that are dying. It's the people who are going to get sick. There's young people who are going to have respiratory. It's a respiratory illness, and that's what people are not looking at.
It's a viral pneumonia.
And But letting everybody go back to work, see what they're trying to do is you hear it all the time. Shorten the curve, right? Shorten the curve, because if you don't and you just let everybody go back to work, herd immunity, right? The curve would go so high, right? It would overwhelm everything.
Yes.
Like I said, no ventilators, right? They have no equipment, no masks, no gowns, no nothing. So that's why they're trying to do the lockdown, which would mean slow it down instead of just having it rush all the way up and then burn itself out. But either way, the economy's finished. The system is done as we know it, because if everybody stays home indefinitely, obviously it's crashing. But if this happens, if you just let herd immunity, what's going to happen to the whole system? It's dead either way, right? Like, do you think tourism will ever recover? I mean, that's finished.
Oh, it'll be years. It'll be years.
Yeah.
Globalism is not going to recover from this either.
Oh no, I just don't see this any good way. And that 2.2 million deaths in the U.S., I'd say 1 million deaths would be if you do a herd immunity here. And like I said, Trump should have did as soon as in December. January should have locked the whole country down. Flights from Italy, flights from everywhere. But he took the chance because of the economy. Like, look at what's going on in Spain. I just saw new numbers, and it ain't good. It's not good at all. So, I mean, either way, we're in pretty bad shape. And we just had 17 more people die today, like from today's numbers from yesterday, actually, in New Jersey. And we're at the beginning of this, folks. I mean, this nowhere near the peak. It's just starting because they're just doing testing. That's all I got to say, Mike. Have a good show.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to take a break for station identification. Back with more phone calls after these few words. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show, hour number 2. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. And before we get back to the phones here, a couple of little news items. You remember some people who decided they were going to get themselves famous on social media by licking the toilet seat in an aircraft? And they took a video and it went viral. It did in more ways than one. Apparently, one of the individuals who did that has now tested positive for COVID-19. Also, we're getting word here that the government of Japan and the International Olympic Committee have agreed that the Olympics are going to be put off for one whole year until 2021. So let's go back to the phones here to Dan in Washington. Aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike, thanks for taking the call. Yeah, I just talked to a girl that lives south of Spokane, and she can't work. She is in the farming industry, and they're making them stay home. But they have 6 people positive for the virus, and 2 of them they sent home to quarantine at home, and then the other 2 are still in the hospital, and they're all young. She says they're calling out the National Guard.
Yes.
They have 3 ships, I guess, on the way. Still going to park outside L.A., New York, and Seattle area.
Well,
medical ships.
Military hospital ships, there's only 2 of them, the Hope and the Mercy.
Okay.
And one parked in New York Harbor, and the other one should be arriving in Los Angeles any time now.
Okay, and then she said the hospital where she goes, because she has some health issues, but the wing where they're treating these people, they're wearing hazmat suits.
Yes.
All the nurses and doctors, and so it's I had an open mind. I think it's irresponsible. Some people say, "Oh, it's just the flu," and it's like this. To me, it sounds more like it's pneumonia that spreads like the flu, like it attacks your lungs like pneumonia. Yeah, so let's compare it to pneumonia that's spreading around like the flu, and that's very, it just sounds horrible. So, I don't like a lot of the police state stuff either, but, and I actually did buy some silver last week. We were talking about that, and the silver market crashed, and then now it's all sold out. You can't even buy silver right now. But so I wasn't sure if this is an economic thing and they're just hyping this virus, but this virus seems pretty real, so I would not just blow it off. People are blowing it off, and we'll see. I guess we'll see in the next couple of weeks here how bad this gets. But you talk to people in the medical industry, it's not a joke.
There's definitely a real virus. It's a viral pneumonia. It is not the flu. It is a viral pneumonia, and it is very, very serious. And there are a lot of people who are in denial, and there are people who are trying to be concerned about it, but they're not thinking clearly. We've got people who've got 4 months worth of toilet paper in their house and only 2 weeks worth of food. So they're really not thinking very, very clearly about that.
Well, and people, they do, they should be paying people. If they're telling you not to work, then they should give everybody unemployment, or, if you own a small business, they should work it out with the banks where the landlord doesn't pay his mortgage payment and the business doesn't have to pay rent in the strip mall or whatever. So they do need to make sure that any help goes to the average person and not just a bunch of trillion-dollar nonsense. But we do definitely need, to be paying people. You're going to have mass starvation. You can't tell people not to work. And then,
There was talk of a moratorium on foreclosures and evictions here, but it's already falling apart. Apparently, Chase is refusing to do anything to help the pressures on their customers, their mortgage customers.
Yeah, I heard actually China, someone did an article comparing China's response to ours, and theirs was better as far as protecting capitalism. If you just pause all the mortgage payments and pause all this stuff, then you won't have to give people loans. It will just, as long as they have to stay shut, you pause everything, and then that would be easier to recover from, I would think.
Well, unfortunately, you can't pause the fact that they need to eat, and they need to keep the lights on. Right. They need the heat on in the colder parts of the country. And they're talking about a $1,500 check to everybody who makes less than $99,000 a year. But $1,500 sounds good, but it's, we're basically looking at an entire month before Donald Trump's deadline to end the lockdowns. And so $1,500, I think.
$1,500 is that's meager too. I mean, that's what a lot of people make a week usually. So it should be more like $5,000 a month, really, or $4,000 or something, But $100 a month is worthless, So,
when you consider how much the government has taken away from the American people, and now in this time of crisis, they're going to give us back $1,500. That's
right.
It's a pittance.
That's less than you get on unemployment, really. Unemployment, you would get about that, 60, maybe get $1,600 a month, maybe more, $2,000 a month, I think, average. But anyway, I'm just called to report what I thought that was weird. 6 people, and she lives in a very rural part of Spokane, so it's spreading and it's bad. So take it seriously.
Oh, we're taking it seriously. Anyway, thanks an awful lot for the phone call. We're going to do a shout out to our on-air affiliates who are rejoining the network. Back to the phones to Bruce in Texas. Bruce, thank you for waiting so patiently. What's on your mind?
Oh, no problem. How do you like your 2-hour format? A little bit easier on you?
Yeah, it is a little bit easier on me, to be very honest.
I imagine. That's good. That's good. Well, I'm glad you're still on the air, though. But I'm kind of glad you're taking an hour off. After your ordeal in the hospital and all that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, I joined the show late, so I don't know. Have you heard about Harvey Weinstein?
Yeah, he's tested positive for the COVID-19, and as of yesterday, he hadn't been told. I imagine he's probably figured it out by now.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I don't really think that's really really convenient.
It's another pitiful bit for sympathy.
Oops, he died, and then he's in Haifa with his buddies over there.
He's down in the islands playing with Jeff Epstein and Ken Lay.
Yeah. We always got to keep that possibility in mind. I'm really wondering. There's the hoaxer, the thing that it's complete hoax. That I think there's a lot of people are either really led by the leash by the sinful agents, or they just it's pretty much knee-jerk? There's no way this whole global pandemic can be a hoax. That has to be absurd, you know.
No, there's a real virus out there. Everybody's using it to push their own agenda.
Yeah, everyone's jumping on it and trying to spin it in their own direction.
If we don't get this economy back on track, we're going to start seeing people committing suicide in worse numbers than the coronavirus.
Right. You know, it's going to be interesting how the big banks play this. We're going to find out if they still have a vested interest in maintaining the global economy, or if they just want to burn it down and buy up the assets and leave us all hanging. You know, it could be like another repeat of the former Soviet Union crashing, when all the oligarchs went and bought up everything for pennies on the dollar. You know,
could very well be.
Yeah, but they pause. Maybe they do like a 3-month buy period on interest rates, or on compound interest. That might help things, but if they'll be passed on down to the consumer level, I don't know. I'm really concerned about the U.S. military using their. It's a good thing. I was in a military response for Hurricane Andrew down in Homestead, Florida.
Yeah.
And, so the military can do good things. We did an excellent job down there compared to Katrina later on. But also it can harm our military readiness. A lot of these patients, they're going to be taking the overload, the non-COVID-19 patients on their hospital ships. And but a lot of them may have the virus. They may not tested for it. I'm a little bit concerned about that. I don't know. You think that's a concern?
Yeah, that is a concern, again, because apparently, and again, this is coming from a study that's out of China, 1/3 of the people who've got COVID-19 don't know they've got it, and their doctors don't know they've got it. They're not symptomatic, and unless they get a genetics test, they don't know that they're carrying the virus. In a way, it's kind of like dengue fever, where 3% of the cases are going to go hemorrhagic, about another 20% will present like a mild flu, and the vast majority of people who get dengue fever never know they had it.
Right, yeah. I had to give one more thing and then the topic, and then you can go on to the next caller. About 2 weeks ago, I was reading articles, mostly from the foreign press, from Press TV, RT, Sputnik News, Mint Press, about this virus having the identifying characteristics of a bioweapon. And it was pretty convenient that it hit China and Iran almost simultaneously after that U.S. military team was there in Wuhan back in late October for military athletics, So we haven't made a case of the genie being let out of the bottle and having it go worldwide. And I just found it interesting that Trump kept referring to it as the Chinese virus, It was a little bit like projection to me. And the ADL came out.
No, the problem is that whatever it was originally, it's mutated several times since then.
Yeah. Okay, that's all I got. Just things to keep in mind.
All right, well, thanks an awful lot. We're going to switch over to Steve Elkins. Aloha, Steve. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
He doesn't quite understand the ventilator here. I just saw Cuomo on TV here talking about we need, FEMA has 20,000 ventilators on hold. We need them. They're going to give us 400, which is nothing. But we need 30,000 ventilators. This is a major overshoot on this panicdemic. I can tell you right now, people don't quite understand a ventilator. Maybe you should go online and look what a ventilator looks like. But there's a lot of special training that goes into putting somebody on a ventilator. Where I can maintain a ventilator and do some settings and some certain things on a vent, I am really not allowed to do major stuff on a ventilator. That is the responsibility of a respiratory therapist. That's their training. That's their only thing they do is ventilator management. And I just don't think people understand that we need ventilators. You need people to operate the ventilators, knowledgeable people to operate these ventilators. This is ridiculous. I mean, You just think you can bring them in the room and throw somebody on a ventilator, and a nurse will know all the settings and all the different modes and how to put them on and do all these certain techniques, and it's just not possible. They're missing the big picture here. It's not just the apparatus. We're talking about a lot of extensive training. People go to school for respiratory therapy. They know how to use the ventilators. So I just wanted to put a rest to this whole issue. We need ventilators. We need ventilators. You can have them. Put them in every room. That's great. But do you have people know how to use them and operate them correctly? No, you don't. And if you try to force nurses to take responsibility for this machinery, like I said, we do some things on a ventilator. We do some things. But the major portion of it is controlled by the respiratory therapist alone. And if we were to venture in that area, we would be risking our licensure. And we would probably be, we'd lose our license over it. That's flat out. It's their territory. They don't go into my territory, and I really don't go in their territory because they're better at it than I am. I know how to manage a ventilator, a lot of things, but they were actually trained on that machinery. Lots of extensive training, and I just want to put that to rest, that people said we need ventilators, we need ventilators. You need people to train to operate those ventilators, and that's not going to happen overnight.
Yeah, but on the other hand, you know, whatever respiratory therapists you have there, they're going to be working on more than one machine at a time.
Well, they are. And in the ICU, you'll have a respiratory therapist on an ICU. Let's say 25 on the ICU. There might be she may have 8 patients. There'll be 3 to 4 respiratory therapists. They'll be taking care of 25 patients. There's a lot of work to go with those ventilators. A lot of work. So you're going to need a lot more respiratory therapists, and they're just not out there. You don't have them. You can get all the ventilators you want. You don't have the people to run them. Unless you start breaking rules and saying, well, we're going to forget about that. We're going to do a crash course to your nurses, and you're going to learn how to put somebody on a vent and do all these things. You'd be risking your licensure if you did it. I wouldn't do it.
I would not be surprised if there was some kind of an executive order waiving that.
That would be well, I don't know, in desperate times maybe, but I think it's an overshoot for the amount of numbers they want for the ventilators. I think it's a major overshoot. Do you remember how they did that with Katrina? All those mobile homes out there. We need all these mobile homes, and they sat there. They sat there in the dirt, and they started to sink in the mud. They overshoot everything. Everything government does, they overshoot it by a mile. They're expensive. They overshoot everything. Everything government touches is very expensive and inefficient almost every time.
Well, you're certainly right about that.
That's it for me. My rant is over. Sorry, Mike. Nice to have you back.
That's okay. Thanks. It's good to be back. And we're going to go to W in Texas. Aloha, W. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind? W in Texas, are you there? Okay.
Sorry about that. Hey, Mike. Yeah, I had actually heard about the ventilator. Can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
Yes, I actually heard about that ventilator and nurses situation too this week. But I was just calling about, you had a caller yesterday mentioned the tonic, the effective chemical or the active ingredient, quinine. And so I'm learning like the last 2 days a lot about that. And I guess they actually are, some of these countries are using, I guess, a synthetic version of quinine, hydrochloroquine or something like that to that effect. And that chemical, I guess, they're saying it's actually treating and killing people that have the COVID-19. So I thought that's pretty interesting. But the thing about it, the tonic is something you can just buy in a store. And I guess they're saying it prevents the virus from connecting to your, what's the word? One of those cell element. And it just prevents the virus from hooking up to your cells. And so I thought that was pretty interesting, the whole tonic. So maybe, I don't know, that may be the savior is this whole quinine, because Pence actually mentioned today they're doing some treatments using that right now. They're doing some treatments using that. So it's kind of interesting.
We had another caller yesterday saying exactly the same thing. Excuse me just a second. Okay. Don't know what happened to my voice there. Excuse me. Anyway, anything else, W?
No, that was it. I hope that is the Superman for this situation, because it's pretty ridiculous. Thank you.
All right. And we're going to go to Tom in Florida. Aloha, Tom. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, good day to you, Michael. First off, before I go there, yeah, and I saw on Breitbart today, they're saying you can put a hairdryer up your nose for 30 seconds and that will kill the virus. That's on Breitbart. Who knows what that's all about?
Oh,
Hairdryer.
boy.
Have you heard about that?
Yeah.
Yeah. And listen, Michael, I'm going to get to this. I'm going to get this off my chest, and then I'm going to go on to what I want to talk about. After I hung up, I listened to your show, and your friend from New Jersey calls in, and he says I'm wrong. All the time he's saying I'm wrong about Trump, this and that, wrong here, wrong there, wrong. Well,
Let's not get the feud going, okay?
Listen, Michael, I'm just going to say it like this. Dustin, I'm not wrong. Trump did try to shut off the travel ban to China because he knew New York was the one place in San Francisco where a lot of Chinese coming in, and Trump did try to stop it as quick as he could. He was getting a lot of pressure from his own party and the demon rats going nuts about he's a racist and this and that. So, Dustin, you're wrong. You're wrong. Trump did try to put the travel ban on the Chinese a lot sooner than people are talking. Matter of fact, Michael, I was just looking now on Newsmax. You know how many Chinese supermarkets are in New York?
Tom, got to put you on hold. Don't hang up. I'm going to come right back to you. And here we're talking with Tom in Florida, and Tom, just sort of pick up where you left off.
Sure, Michael. Yeah, Michael. First off, I saw this now that there's more Chinese restaurants and supermarkets in New York than there is in San Francisco, which was surprising to me. I didn't know that. I also didn't know this, Michael, and I don't know if your audience knows this. The third biggest food staple in China for meat is first they eat a lot of chicken, they eat a lot of pork, but their third biggest staple is exotic animals. Like, well, you got dogs, cats, and all the other exotic animals. So I didn't realize that China eats so many dogs. They eat more dogs, I think, in Vietnam and all of the rest of those Asian countries put together, and that's very surprising to me. But they also eat a thing called, Michael, have you heard about bird nest soup?
Yes.
They eat a lot of that in Indonesia and China. You know about that, right?
Yes.
What exactly? What is it? They go up in there into the bird's nest to get the soup or something from the eggs or something?
No, what it is, pardon me. What it is they go in to these large caves where these specific birds nest, and they grab this glue, if you will, this spit that the birds use to hold their nests in place and hold them together. And they use it as a flavoring agent. And there's high demand for it. It's very dangerous work because you're up on these very tall ladders on the walls of the caves. But that's, it's bird's nest flavored soup. And that's how they make it.
Well, Michael, let me ask you, bats stay in caves too. Maybe they sometimes they make a mistake and they get bat goo, or maybe that's not birds. Who knows what it is? But I didn't realize that. Yes. Yeah, it could be a bat. Maybe they're eating bats. I don't understand it all, but they say this thing came out of a bat or an armadillo. I don't know. But what's really crazy is they're trying to blame this on Trump as far as he should have. Trump's been as tough as there is on immigration and border, keeping terrorists and everything out of this country. Can you imagine Hillary or Biden in there? They let everybody come in here, and you got bumbling Biden saying there's only 11 million in here. Nobody's correcting this guy. It's nonsense. And when you look at I don't know what's going on in New York as far as how many open markets they have, Chinese markets they got in New York. But I know they have a lot of open markets. The last time I was in San Francisco back in the mid '80s, they had a big, giant, open Chinese supermarket. They were selling all kinds of stuff. And then, San Francisco, you got the homelessness, and you got all the disease. They got the poop control in San Francisco. I don't know about New York. But this guy Como, this moron in New York, the governor, this guy here, New Jersey, the same thing. They know they have these open markets and all this stuff with all this bacteria and all that. It's no wonder New York has so many cases of this coronis, whatever.
Wait a minute. I think you're making an unsupported leap there. That the coronavirus continues to pour out of the markets. The original market that was blamed for the release of coronavirus has already been demolished and gotten rid of. There's another school of thought that this was a bioweapon in development, not a finished product, but a work in progress, and somebody dropped a test tube. And since there was this open market nearby the BSL 4 laboratory, that they just said, well, we'll blame it on the marketplace and the exotic foods. But even if it did originate in that market in Wuhan, that doesn't necessarily mean that the same thing is happening to all the Chinese markets in San Francisco and New York.
Well, Michael, they had something else on the news that was very interesting. In Beijing, their air quality cleaned up like 50%. You saw that on the news today?
I saw that. Because everybody's staying home and the factories shut down.
Yeah, their air quality improved within a month's time, 2 months' time, the better than it's ever been over there in the last 50 years, I guess. So,
same
there's horrible things coming out of this, but there's a good thing. So,
same thing's happening. They can actually see the bottom of the canals for the first time in decades.
That's very interesting, yes. And, to keep this, this whole thing with the demon rats holding up this bill is about the Green New Deal. But, Michael, that's another thing that's really perplexing to me, and I know it's perplexing to you. This Green New Deal, these same Democrats who want Green New Deal, they don't give a darn about immigration. They don't care if 50 million pour in here. What do they think these illegal immigrants want? They want cars. They want to have housing. They have to have toilet paper. They have to have hands. I mean, you're putting such a burden on the American public by bringing in all these millions of people have to have a car one day. They all want to have clean toilet paper, clean toilets to sit on. They don't have that where they come from. None of them had cars. I told you, 99% of the people in Cuba do not have a car in Cuba.
Yeah, I know.
None of Cuba. None of them. And only the Communist Party members have a car over there. Unless they have a family member, they drive taxis around. But you're bringing multiple millions of people whose kids are going to come in here wanting to have cars. They got to have jobs. They got to have toilet paper. They got to have fresh water, showers. I mean, you're going to destroy, like you said it 6 months ago, Michael, this country can't sustain, this country will not be able to sustain 200 million people. Ain't no way.
All right, well, Tom, thanks a lot. We got to let you go and take another break for commercials. We got another caller waiting on the line who's been waiting very patiently, and we will be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. We're going to go back to the phones to Murr in Wisconsin. Murr, thank you for waiting so patiently. What's on your mind?
Oh, no problem. Hey, you look really good, and you got steady real quick. I was listening yesterday when you first came on, and you just picked up steam. You sound really good.
Well, thank you.
Are you hardwired? Yeah. Are you hardwired there yet?
I'm not exactly sure what you mean by that, but I mean, I've got the studio.
Yeah. And like that watch on your hand, is that Wi-Fi?
No, we're not using the Wi-Fi to do the show.
Okay, but on your wrist, what is that watch? Is that wireless?
It's an iWatch.
Yes. Huh?
It's an iWatch.
Wireless?
Well, it's Bluetooth to my iPhone.
Oh, I see. Okay. Because I got thinking about, because I heard you say that it was poliomyelitis neurology. And I wondered how much, because that, both ionizing and non-ionizing are cumulative. But, yeah, what I called you about, though, was I can't hear you.
Can you hear me? I can hear you just fine.
Oh, okay. Okay, maybe you weren't saying anything just then. Yeah, today's date. Huh?
I said I don't have anything worthwhile to say.
Oh. Hey, you know what? This economy needs to end. Not collapse, but to end. We need a better system.
It's the private central banking. It's the system, the private central banking system.
Well, you're the guy, right? You were the guy. All wars are bankers' wars, huh? You're the guy.
I'm the guy. Mea culpa, man.
Yeah, well, in 1933, that's 87 years ago, Judea declared war on Germany.
Yes.
Isn't that interesting? They like to go by dates. They like to pick up some of the same dates and harass us with them and how mistreated they were. And, it's all lies. And Samuel Untermeyer came back all full of lies, and it was on WABC about this holy war they had to conduct against these awful people that how all through time they're persecuted, and and the ones that persecute them can't get away with because they are the aristocrats, And he said the 600,000 must be protected. I'm like, whoops, what happened to the hex million? Now we're just down to hex 100,000s? Uh-oh. Somebody call the history fact checker. Well, we don't have one, I guess.
No.
But, so,
well,
yeah, right after
thrown in jail.
yeah, right? We don't know where they went. Yeah. 1914, though, same thing. 1929, same thing. Just pull down the economy because they can. And it serves their purposes. And they're the same ones that own the politicians via the pharmacy, which is sorcery.
Okay.
And
Murr, I don't think it's a case of them pulling the economy down. It's the fact that private central banking is inherently unstable, because when you create money out of thin air and loan it at interest, eventually the debt swamps the system, and there'll be a crash, and they'll restart it all over because people are too dumb to figure out that they're being had.
See, they use things like this to front. Okay, because viruses are a dead thing. Okay, there's bacteria, and we're outnumbered by about 20 to 1. That bacteria that we work with, it keeps us healthy and keeps our immunities high.
Yes.
But all this other nonsense is just for fear-mongering. And I was reading on Jim Stone today. Now, he's kind of fallen for it. But also, apparently, besides not going on the beaches, they're shutting down marinas and ports so no one can leave. You would think it might be wise if you had a boat to get off to some island and, wait it out a couple months. But I kind of think, because this Spygate thing is bigger than Watergate. And then we have the child trafficking and all the rest of it. And if you really want to go after, even behind the scenes, all of this stuff, you have to do something to keep everybody else occupied. So you have to make them think they need to, and we can do that. We can just chill. Because I think we just need not to stress out, because that's what makes us sick in the long run. And like Steve and like other ones in jobs or caring for people, they may try to get people like that to stay at their jobs, not even let them go home. So we have to really pray for each other and strengthen each other, with our thoughts and our telepathy and everything else. Because this too will pass. What they say, it's on hashtag on YouTube, Andre Tetu Bene, or how's it pronounced? Bene, yeah, Italian. It'll be all right. And they're moving all the old folks' deaths into the COVID column. And Italy was the next to come up to get out of the EU. And they also were going to repudiate this IMF debt. See, the Fed is owned by the IMF, and then, of course, the IMF and all the banks eventually go to the international settlements. But what they do is they sanction them. See, that's what in 1933, right away, with all the boycott and sanctioning around the world, all the Jewish people in every big city, they started doing this. And what is it they don't want us to do? Boycott them, right? Or sanction or divest. So it's again with the money. They want us to be under the thumb. And no matter what they say, even if they change what they're saying back to something they already said was a lie, and they go back and pick it up again. So we just need to get away from all of it a lot of the time. I know I'm turning on the computer later and later in the day just so I don't have to hear that word over and over, or those words. Because it's, just take care of yourself, people. Stay hydrated, get plenty of rest, And when we were talking about
Said, get outside into the sunlight, get some vitamin D.
Yeah, go walking, and you'll burn up that cortisol. Yeah. But a lot of people, when they're starting to feel sick, they get the raspy throat and they take the vitamin C right away, but they're already too acid. What you need to do, we're electrical beings, is raise the pH. You can cook garlic and onions and some coconut oil and with something else if you want or not. I mean, it doesn't have to be raw. It doesn't have to be unpleasant. And that will raise your pH and give you sulfur. Then you take your vitamin C, right? And don't forget about comfrey.
Certainly won't.
Remember about comfrey.
Yep.
You heal from the inside out. people need to really, really look into that. Patrick Jordan was filling in for Ingrid Castle week before this one, and that's what he's finding. You know, and you get the officinalis. You know, a lot of these herbs end in officinalis because they were all part of the catalog of healing, herbal healing. And then pharmacy comes along, sorcery, and just takes and mimics them. It gives you synthetic back and harmful besides. So the officinal is the ones, you know, they try to replace it with ones that are knockoffs, and they can be poisonous and they don't reproduce. You know, so then they can legitimately say, oh, comfrey's dangerous. Well, it is if you get what they replaced it with. You know, so it's like everything else. You just got to look into it and satisfy your curiosity, I think, maybe. What do you think?
Well, I'm in agreement with you on everything that you said there. I raised my pH with essential water, and I discovered that back when I was dealing with gout, which I no longer deal with because I keep my pH as high as I can.
Ah, yeah. And the thing is, you know, we need the acid in our stomach, our digestion, you know, a little vinegar or whatever, but heart foods like that. But the blood, is, what is it, 7.43 pH, I guess. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's about
finding the balance.
Yeah. Anyway, listen.
We're each unique, too. That's another thing to consider, definitely. You know, we're each unique in what we need to balance.
Well, that's true also of medication, and this one-size-fits-all that we get from Big Pharma, I think, is one of the reasons there's so many problems. Because when they come out with something like a vaccine that produces Guillain-Barré syndrome, it doesn't produce it in everybody who gets the vaccine, just those who are susceptible. And I would hope that some point in the future, the science would advance to the point where drugs are being produced that are tailored to the individual patient, rather than simply another pill out of the bottle that goes to everybody. Anyway, listen, we're going to let you go because we're running out of time.
Same thing with entertainment. We have things that actually encourage people instead of depress them and frighten them. Thank you, Mike. Bye-bye.
All right, bye-bye. Thanks an awful lot. Getting on back to the news here. The White House Trade and Manufacturing Director, Peter Navarro, is on the warpath against price gougers and those who are hoarding medical supplies. So if you're thinking about hoarding a lot of toilet paper and then selling it at a premium, might not be a really good idea. And I'm going to take back my offer yesterday that you get a free roll of toilet paper autographed for $1,000 donation, because obviously that would be price gouging on that one, and I don't want to get into trouble with Peter Navarro here. Down in Australia, they're very upset that beer has not yet been declared essential to life, and that they may not be able to get that. Those Australians take their beer very, very seriously. I've been down there. All righty. Now, apparently, polls are showing that Donald Trump's approval is going up with each one of his coronavirus briefings. In fact, we're just starting on another one right now. And the liberal media is out there saying there should be a blackout. Don't let President Trump talk to the American people about what's being done about coronavirus. Joe Biden, it's okay. And Cuomo's okay, but not Donald Trump. They're afraid that he's going to come out of this thing with a political upswing. And so they're literally out there saying, no, don't just black him out. Well, now, Donald Trump may be president of the United States of America, but he is also a citizen of the United States of America, and as such, he is protected by the First Amendment. And by the way, we have these large corporate media outlets like Facebook and Google and the rest of it who are openly censoring people on this theory that the First Amendment only constrains the United States government from limiting free speech, and it doesn't apply to private corporations. Well, that's not true, because there was a Supreme Court decision, and this was back, I think, in like the 1930s, involving a group called the Cherry Sisters. And the Cherry Sisters were these 5 sisters who put on this vaudeville act that was really, really terrible. And the local newspaper wrote a very negative review of them, and the Cherry Sisters sued for defamation or libel or something like that, and they lost the case. because the court said that, having an opinion is protected by the First Amendment. And in this case, they weren't dealing with a government entity. They were dealing with a privately owned company, a newspaper, a publisher. And so the fact of the matter is that the First Amendment, according to this precedent, the First Amendment does apply to Google, to Facebook, to YouTube, to Twitter. So you just might want to keep that in mind. I'll have more about that case because when I heard about it, and I heard about it on Mysteries at the Museum, which is a really cool show, by the way, and the first thing I thought is, wow, this is the legal precedent that undermines this whole idea that private companies have the right to censor people who use their platforms. And I think it's time for a class action lawsuit, to be very honest. Okay, as I mentioned before, Joe Biden is planning to start giving his own briefings on COVID-19. He's not getting a lot of press lately with the nomination all but over. In fact, Cuomo's getting more press than Biden is right now. Biden was kind of like absent from the media for a while, and people were starting to wonder what was going on. And apparently his first attempt at the coronavirus briefing was marred by technical issues, and Biden himself, who is, I'm sorry, there's a problem there. There's definitely a problem. Up in Portland, Oregon, police arrested 42-year-old Vladislav Drozdek. He stole 10,000 N95 face masks out of the garage of a nonprofit that was supplying area hospitals and tried to sell them on Craigslist. Come on, people. It's a crisis. We all got to pull together. We've all got to take the high road here. And unfortunately, that does not apply to the computer criminals because they're out there like crazy. There's a cyber attack. It's hijacking routers' DNS settings so that web browsers will display alerts for a fake COVID-19 information app from the World Health Organization that is actually the VIDAR information stealing malware. And for the past 5 days, people have been reporting their web browser would open on its own and display a message prompting them to download a COVID-19 information app that was allegedly from the World Health Organization. And apparently it was determined these alerts were being caused by an attack that changed the DNS servers configured on their home D-Link or Linksys routers to use DNS servers operated by the attackers. And it's a reminder, folks, when you get a router of any kind, change that default password. The sad fact is most people don't. Most people will just leave the default password. They'll write it down someplace. You need to change it. Change it to something very difficult to get into. Because otherwise, they'll come in over the net. They'll log into your router using the default password, default account, and they'll go on in there and they'll, like in this particular case, they'll change the DNS servers that you're using. And you'll be sent to a bogus DNS server that is pushing malware. Okay. Sites promoting a bogus corona antivirus are taking advantage of the pandemic to promote and distribute a malicious payload that will infect the target's computer, adding it to a botnet. The two sites promoting the fake antivirus software can be found at antiviruscovid19.site and coronaantivirus.com as discovered by Malwarebytes. Okay, now, apparently the GINP mobile banker Trojan is targeting Spain with the coronavirus finder lure. And apparently the app that they're pushing claims to show the location of infected people nearby you for a small fee, for so many coins or whatever, so many bitcoins, will tell you who around you has coronavirus. And of course, the purpose is to make victims provide payment card data in the hope of learning how close they are to infected individuals. And that data is then used to loot their bank account. Now, back when I worked on Lost, I got to work with Daniel Day Kim, who has tested positive for coronavirus. He apparently has been taking hydroxychloroquine and claims it's the secret weapon in his recovery. So he's out there saying that, yes, this stuff really does work. Okay, here's an article this came out of Zero Hedge. Actually, we got to take a break for commercials. Back with the last segment of our show after these few words. Stay tuned. To fund an anti-Trump effort. Now, my question is, I thought there were supposed to be limits on contributions from personal individuals. Maybe it doesn't apply to the campaign. But this is another example of the ultra-rich trying to buy the political system that will serve their interests best. We used to have laws.
Sorry,
Okay.
Mike, I lost you here, so I'm just getting you back after the break.
Okay, you can hear me though, right?
Yeah, I got you now.
You got me now. Okay. So we're talking about Mike Bloomberg's campaign has transferred a record $18 million to the DNC in an anti-Trump effort. And I guess campaigns are allowed to basically send as much money as they feel like sending. We used to have laws in this country that limited political donations so that the size of a candidate's war chest was a true measure of their popular support. But no more. And we have a bunch of billionaires who are simply buying the government that they want to have that will serve their interests best. All righty. We talked about this earlier in the show. This is an article out of Blabberbuzz. Apparently, Democrats are now demanding New York Governor Cuomo replace Sanders and Biden as the nominee. Well, Sanders is pretty much out of it. He's already stopped paying for any more ads and appearances. So at this point, it's going to be Trump, Biden come November. Speaking of November, they're saying that the national general election may be handled entirely by mail. And I wouldn't want to be the person who's opening all those envelopes. Okay. Now, Cuomo has a little bit of a ghost in his closet because apparently Cuomo rejected buying a recommended 16,000 ventilators back in 2015 for a potential pandemic, and instead established death panels and a lottery instead. So if he does try and go for the nomination at a brokered convention, that's going to come up. That's a little bit of baggage he's carrying. And let's see, Adam Schiff is out there invoking sovereign immunity, trying to dismiss the lawsuit over subpoenaed phone records. Well, Adam, you're not the president. What can I tell you? And I don't think sovereign immunity applies to members of Congress. But it was a nice try. Okay, and we should be into our closing out music. So I'm basically going to say, please stay tuned for John Stadmiller. I'm sure he's got lots of interesting things to share with you. Yeah, here's the music. There it is. Okay, stay tuned for John Stadmiller. I'm sure he's got lots of interesting things to share with you. Please spread the word of RBN. Please spread the word of whatreallyhappened.com. Please donate. We are in dire straits out here, and we need your help. And we'll be back tomorrow. Aloha, America.